Continuamos. Gracias por estar ahí. Tuvimos una mañana muy intensa con temas de inteligencia artificial, algoritmos.
We're going to continue. Thank you for being there. We had a very interesting morning. We talked about the impact of regulations in some regions such as the European Union, what happens in Latin America, ethics. And now I would like to welcome a friend of mine, Laura Marés. She's an expert in education and technology, and now she's the director or CEO, I don't know how to tell it, of Educ.ar, which is a public organization dedicated to content and material for education in Argentina. You have always developed very interesting material for virtual work. And now we are facing a special situation with these virtual classrooms and kids that may not have computers and may not have access to the technology or even to internet. So now I think that yours is a very interesting resource for education. And Laura has been involved with regional organizations for a long time, organizations that are connected to education, and maybe she can give us some details about that. We have a very diverse audience. We have simultaneous translation into Spanish and into English. We have people through YouTube. We have a lot of students, many from America and many from other regions such as Asia, Europe. You are an important member of the education sector in Argentina, so it's a great pleasure to have you here with us. We are wearing matching colors. I didn't send Laura a WhatsApp to tell her that I was wearing red today, but here we are. Welcome, Laura, and the floor is all yours. It's a great pleasure to be here. Thank you for inviting me to be part of this school. I hope that we can soon have meetings face-to-face in your great place, and that we can meet to discuss these interesting topics. As you were saying, I am the general manager. That is the position that I hold in Educ.ar. Educ.ar is an agency of the state, is part of the Ministry of Education. We are part of the state, but we are also like a company. We are the agency executing the technology policies of the Ministry of Education. In general terms, everything that has to do with improving education through technology and to have a quality education, an inclusive education to reach the highest amount of people possible. In this particular scenario, because I took office on February 18th, and a few days later, we started analyzing the possibility of closing schools. At the time, we thought that it was going to be for a few days, maybe a month or 45 days, and it took longer, as you all know. In Argentina, schools have been closed in most jurisdictions. Only in a few jurisdictions we were able to open up schools again. And as of yesterday, we agreed to start opening schools a little by little with a different kind of like a hybrid model so that kids can have contact with school and with their teachers. As I was saying, when I took office, the scenario was totally different. We were thinking about organizing different strategies and resources, and quickly we had to change that agenda. We had to start thinking about different kind of scenarios. In February 2020, we would have suggested teachers to talk to their students through technology, through WhatsApp or video conference, many would have thought that it was crazy. And maybe it was, because the system was not ready for that. And I would dare say that not any system in the world was ready for that. But we had to face that situation. And the first thing we did was to work with a program that's called We Continue Educating, because even though schools were closed, we still had a connection with teachers and students and schools, and we wanted to continue educating. We wanted to build on the idea of continuing educating and looking for alternatives to face that problem, that moment, and to help students and teachers and schools. We didn't want to suggest like a distance education model, because it requires a different kind of technique. We also faced the situation that between 2010 and 2015, the program Conectar Igualdad gave computers to all the secondary school students and all teachers in the country, because the idea was inclusion, so that all could have access to technology. Later, the model changed and it was called Aprender Conectados, Learn Connected. And the idea was to use the computer only for education. That's why computers were not given to the students any longer. And packages of 20 or 30 or 50 computers were bought for schools. Nobody could thought about this, but when schools are closed, you cannot use those computers because the director is the responsible person for those computers, and they cannot give those computers to students. So this increased the gap. And so what we did was started working on a model in which we gave certain suggestions through the web to work with kids and with families, and we were reaching a very small amount of the population, like 30%. So what we did was had a zero rating policy with an ACOM, and then this was extended to all universities in the countries and all the portals in every jurisdiction. It means that browsing in our portals is not going to be using data in the cell phones data plans. That allows us to reach a higher amount of people, but that was not what we wanted to do. I talked about not using cell phones and tablets for education at schools because it makes learning the contents more difficult. It only makes us use the concepts that others have developed. We started using also some TV shows to teach. At the beginning, it was 14 hours a day. Now those are 7 hours a day for kids from kindergarten to high school. It is in the public TV, Encuentro, Paca Paca, and all the channels in the interior of the country as well. We also started having 7 hours of radio broadcasting every day with different podcasts and interviews, and we know that we have a bigger scope there because in the provinces, generally the radio is something that they use a lot and it's free. So we knew that we were going to be reaching a higher amount of the population that way. And the final link in this system was handbooks to reach levels that the other media couldn't. And with this multimedia model, what we were trying to do was to face the challenge in the first month of this pandemic. And the idea was to help students. Many times when they talk about the media, they talk about classes, lessons, and going back to school. We are not talking about going back to school or going back to the way we were before. We're talking about facing a challenge and trying to help students. It's not so important to learn new things, but to keep the link with schools. This is our immediate agenda, and we have also been working at different levels, thinking about 2021. That's why we have a platform that is called Juana Manso, that is thought to work in different models, linking students with schools. And there's also a federal open resource platform. Those are going to be resources developed by all the provinces and also the city of Buenos Aires. There are different protocols for importing and exporting resources so that anybody participating can use them. And we also have a data lake and data warehouse where we want to start working with data that would allow us to understand the behaviors of teachers and students and to make future decisions based on evidence, to start understanding which are the most attractive resources, the less attractive ones, which demand more work, which are the strategies of teachers that have better results with students, which are the most interesting courses, and we try to work on that so as to start having a data science focus in education. That's why we have been working with the Sadowski Foundation to define this data lake and data warehouse models, and also on the data protection policies that will allow us to have reliability and trust on those data privacy. Another important partner of us is ARSAT and the School of Engineering. They helped us with the e-learning platforms and content delivery. In the future, we are thinking about having a tool within the platform, a chat like WhatsApp, but within our platform. Why do we want that? Because we need to have a controlled environment in which talks are recorded, and we make sure that those talks between adults and kids are safe and that can be trusted. Nowadays, we can see that grooming is worse, and it's very difficult to control in tools such as WhatsApp or Telegram. So we would like to have a more controlled environment in that sense. It's not easy, but we are focusing on that, and we are working with Ceci together with that to have the best way of having this chat tool and the video conferencing tool within the platform. We need to make sure that the relationship between teachers and students continue. We focus on everything within the platform is going to be open software. Open source software, we are going to start having everything open sourced as of March next year. That is the idea in the platform, the classrooms, the repository, and the data warehouse. Maybe the next step that could get us closer to AI, but I want to be a little bit cautious about this because it requires a lot of analysis, and that is to work with a chatbot. Nowadays, we have a chatbot that asks questions and answers, and we want to have a chatbot that can advise teachers, that can help them answer their questions, and that in the future, it can work with kids answering questions as regards resources, content, help them look for resources to help them with their studies with an adequate language, warm. And in the next stage, what we would like to do as regards AI has to do with the fact of being able to start doing analysis, predictive, preemptive, and prescriptive analysis. It's going to be difficult. There's a lot to be done there, but I think that we can work to start pinpointing the students that drop out, and that is not going to be possible without the support of the Ministry of Education, because of course we have the Secretary of Education and many agencies, but they are the ones that are going to define those guidelines, and in Educ.ar we are the ones that are going to apply the technology. In that sense, the Argentinian government decided to start using Red Bell, which was the Latin American network of education portals. Nowadays it's called the Education Platforms Network, and we want to work with Latin America and the member countries sharing experiences. We have a lot to learn. It allows us to get more time and economies of scale, and everything that we're doing in the open software Juana Manso is offered to other countries that may want to use it, and also we can exchange ideas. We can learn from the lessons of this very difficult year. In many places, we are not going to be able to go back to school during the rest of the year, and we need to start thinking about 2021 and 2022, and thinking that 2021 is not only going to be about face-to-face classes, lessons, but that we may have some hybrid environments in which we can work. Probably is not what all of us expected, but it's the situation that we are facing, and it's a situation that changes every week, every month, that is going to depend on having a vaccine education or not, and the guidelines that we have from the Ministry of Health on what we can and can't do. And that is a little bit what we have been working on. In the short and long term. We are also working with ARSAT and ENACOM to offer connectivity to all schools. Nowadays, we have 35% of schools getting connectivity from the Ministry of Education. We want to reach 100%, although there's like 8 or 10% of schools that are in areas where there is no connectivity at all. We are working with ENACOM and ARSAT and the Secretary of Innovation to understand which could be the alternatives there in order to give them that possibility. We need to start working together to see how, for example, in rural schools, without internet nowadays, how we can help them to get it through traditional means and not only satellites that, as you know, is very expensive and not so efficient. We are also analyzing some different models that may help us in this situation. Maybe some servers or in some areas to have internet through cell phones or different ways in which we think that we can do it. So to summarize, in the short term, the idea is to keep students connected to schools. We gave students a lot of computers. We are thinking about connectivity, buying more computers, and thinking more about data science and some AI model. That is, Olga, a little bit what we are doing nowadays. I don't know if you have questions or something that you want to mention. Yes, if you have a few minutes, there are some questions and comments from students. And I was thinking the huge challenge that you are facing, I'm sure you didn't think that you would have to face this, but I think that I'm sure that you are going to face it because you are a great professional. And I think that it was very interesting to see everything that you mentioned about working with ARSAT, with the ministry, with ENACOM. And even though the state may manage some things, cooperation is paramount to keep on going. And I know that you are doing the best possible efforts.
Latin America has a special things or aspects with inequalities. It's a very extensive continent with many, many countries, large countries. Questions from the audience? If there is a study of what is the contribution in terms of education inequalities by the use of ITCs in education? Sometimes we require, if we change the methodology for mathematics or if we use books, if we deliver books. Not only do we have this quantitative or qualitative research, but sometimes where we have better attention span, the closeness, the interest on the part of students to some of the topics. That's why we talk about an inclusion policy. There are no measures that the simple use of technology will not improve the learning curve. What it improves is that by innovating in the system. the technology inclusion, evaluating teachers. By delivering computers, at least is an act of inclusion. And young people have the right to use the computer out of home, at home, out of school, in school, and to share also spaces with parents. Clear. Okay. Raúl Rivero says within the technological scheme, how do you include teachers, content for them, teachers that are overwhelmed because students do not are aware or are more technological adept than teachers. Do you contemplate this in all the training and courses? Yes. We have coordinated this with the teachers training colleges in training the use of technologies and to rethink or reshape practices. In time, we think with them and not overwhelming them or over demanding things from teachers because they are working from home and many of us, 80% of us, are women of teachers and also home care or housewives are women. So apart from that, they have to manage 30 or 40 people over the internet. In general terms, what we try to do in training is not to demand too much, exaggerated, excessive, demanding. We cannot have a 2-hour conference or video conference. The idea is to have some contact that could be 15 or 20 minutes, suggest some readings, and to see them in the afternoon or at the end of the day and to help them. If they can use otherwise other things, okay, fine. But probably they can do it on demand whenever students are free to do so. We will have enough time to recover the learning process. And one more last comment. In some part, remote areas in some provinces that did not have coverage. And that is an issue. I'm sure that you explained this very well. Yes, we work with provinces. The last situation of connectivity was held in 2017, but the statistics change. There are suppliers or ISPs that do not exist. Some of them are growing. And we've been discussing this with ISPs. We want to favor those ISPs that know the territory much better in providing assistance to have a competitive value proposal to get to those areas. You've been very generous with your time. Good luck. Godspeed. I know that this is very demanding. Oscar and Adrián say hi that are here with us organizing this conference. Thank you very much. And on behalf of everybody, I would like to acknowledge you for having discussed these important issues here. Thank you very much. Thank you very much for this new edition. And hopefully during the 13th edition, we can do it in person. Thank you very much. We will reconvene at 2:30. 2:30 Argentine time. See you soon.